you're successful as a mentor when the person that you're mentoring is successful in what they're trying to achieve.
My name is Merrill Dubrow, CEO of Mark Research. I'm a 35-year veteran of the research and insights community and the host of our podcast, On the Mark. On the Mark is focusing on executives and thought leaders in the world, sharing their insights, strategies, and personal experiences. I promise this podcast will be filled with tough, pointed questions with real, insightful, and emotional answers. Today is a little different. We have a really cool surprise. For the first time ever, we have a guest host. It is a pleasure to introduce to you my colleague who is having his podcast debut, Joshua McGinty. Joshua, thanks for hosting the On the Mark podcast.
Thank you for that wonderful intro. As he said, my name is Joshua McGinty. I am a client excellence manager at Mark Research and producer of the On the Mark podcast. Today with me, I have Chris Hauck, consultant at HauckEye. Chris, welcome to On the Mark.
Well, thanks, Joshua. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, can you just give a little bit of a background for our listeners who, may not know all there is to know about you?
Sure. Let's see. I went to Texas Christian University for both undergrad and grad. I like to say it's the only place that would accept me for my grad program. And then I've been in marketing research since grad school, which was in 87, which is a long time ago. Long time ago. But that means I have 33 years of experience in marketing research, which is a big part of who I am, right? I'm really selling wealth experience with both tools and techniques as well as different client types. So I'm experienced, if anything else, and I've seen and done it all. Let's see, I've been on the client side for a number of years at, it's now Verizon, but it was GTE at the time, GTE and GT directories. I never saw myself selling Yellow Page advertising, and never thought that would be much work, but it turned out to be a huge business and lots of fun back in the day. Now it's not, but
right, of course.
It's like the railroad.
Can't really think of the last time I've seen a Yellow Page even just laying around.
Right. Yeah, that was $1 billion business when I worked there.
Wow.
And then I've been with suppliers since. So I started my career for a year with a supplier and then went to GTE. And then the rest of my career has been on the supplier side as an account executive. I started my supplier side career really at the Mark Group as an account executive and then moved on to Chilton, and then I became TNS. And then I started my own 20 years ago, Links Research, and did that for 19 years. And then started my own solo practice on January 1st.
Wow. January 1st, you started that.
I know.
So then 3 months later, we are now experiencing the COVID pandemic, and you have a 3-month-old business.
Joshua, not only do I have a 3-month-old business, but that business's entire focus was on, I love these pieces of research where I actually go and experience something with the respondents, right? So it was all based on this high touch, high in-person, high experience piece of research that I love doing. And that's all I really wanted to do for the longest time. I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. I'm going to go out to lunch with people. I'm going to go to hotels. I'm going to travel with them. I'm going to go buy light bulbs. I'm going to go to the ballet, whatever it is that we're studying. I'm going to go do that with the person and film them doing it. And I'm going to study that. I'm going to come up with all these great insights around that in-person experience. And I absolutely love that work. And I still do, don't get me wrong, but it just was not the business to start, at the beginning of a pandemic.
No, absolutely not. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So then what happened? What did you do? How did you move the business focus when we're not going to theaters and all this high touch in-person stuff is not there?
Yeah. Well, I pivoted. I love bringing these great insights to my clients, right? Just like you guys do and most researchers do, it's all in the, hey, look, I found this little nugget that's going to be really meaningful to you. I still love that aspect of it too. The creative design, how do we get to the answer to this thing? And how do we make it so that people believe that answer and it's meaningful? So I pivoted back to what I've done for most of my career, which is this high touch, high consulting kind of marketing research sale. It's my focus is really on, I have all these tools and techniques that I can bring to the party. Let's talk about your problem and figure out how to get the best way to get to it. So I pivoted back to what really is kind of my roots in research.
With the pivot like that and now doing it back into where your original experience is in, I'm just curious, could you give us and the listeners maybe like a little case study? You can keep it brand anonymous for us, but just kind of curious what that research has looked like in the COVID world and how you've been able to change things around.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm doing for one of my clients is to understand voting behavior for young people, for first-time voters, and how do they get their information? How do they make decisions? What can we say to them to get them to register, to vote early, to vote by mail, to actually go to the polls? How do you convince young new voters that their vote is important? What research can I do in order to, help my client understand that and be able to communicate with them? So spent a lot of time doing Zoom one-on-one interviews with young people, short interviews to really get down to, why do you do this? How do you make this decision? What are your influences? Who could influence you? To really understand their behavior. So, I've done enough short Zoom interviews with young people to develop a good understanding of this. On their end, they're doing a lot of testing the messages we come up with. So, a lot of their work is around, what are the results of the campaign and how's that working? I'm not involved in that part, but my part, the HauckEye part, is really about, this deep learning of how people think about things and how they behave and how they act. It's very qualitative.
That's awesome. Yeah. As a young person, and I certainly have seen, just thinking back on just 4 years ago, the ads that I've seen on just making sure young people are registered to vote on different social media platforms and other entertainment platforms that I use. I certainly see that. And so I see how important that research is. And that's just neat how you have pivoted around to be able to use Zoom and the technology there to still keep this qualitative research going. That's so cool. But kind of on that same vein, let's talk about just the industry as a whole, the insights industry as a whole. Like, what have you seen changed, and what do you think is staying this way because of COVID?
Some things are going to change for the better because of COVID. We'll pay more attention to the way we're doing certain types of projects. We'll really talk about methodology more and how do we get to something in an environment which is probably never going to go back fully to pre-COVID times. The new normal will not be the same as the old normal. There will be differences. We just don't know what they are. I think COVID was actually going to make a lot of us more flexible and smarter and more creative and, braver in some cases.
Just the things that we do differently at Mark now because of COVID. Totally agree that it has made us more nimble. Interesting to just think about what's going to stay the same. Just before we got on we started recording this podcast, I was telling you how much I enjoyed working from home, that I can, work in a t-shirt, or I guess now a sweater, since Texas is deciding to be cold all of a sudden.
Oh, well, we had snow yesterday, Josh. So I'm not, we got really cold. I mean, we dropped 60 plus degrees in 24 hours.
Oh my goodness.
It was just crazy. I know. And snow.
Snow in September. Wow. But you're up in Colorado. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. You're pretty used to the snow by now, I'm sure.
Well, but it's still 2 months early.
Well, hey, so I was digging through your LinkedIn profile and I found this really cool quote that you had typed up, and I'll share that in a second just to kind of give the listeners some context. It was a post that Melanie Courtwright, CEO of the Insights Association, we've had her on the podcast, and check out those episodes if you haven't. She was asking different people for just their opinion on the insights world and what their thoughts were on different things in the insights industry. And you had an interesting quote that I want to read out. In the working world, they, being students, will be introduced to a whole host of tools, techniques, and methodology that don't meet the standards of good data and statistical analysis that they learned about in school. I thought that was really, really interesting. And if you could just expand on that.
Yeah. So Melanie was asking for topics to cover with students, I believe. And I think that's a really important one. I'm on the board of several of the MMR, MSMR programs. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that they learn, the fundamentals of statistics. You guys, because you're one of them, you learn the real fundamentals of statistics. How does data work? How, what's the correct way to collect data? What's sample size? All those little rules that we've been learning for 60 years as an industry, right? 60, 70 years. But what I found over the years, one of the most interesting conversations I remember having was with a guy who was retiring from Hallmark, and he spoke at our conference. He spoke at the UTA conference, and you may have not even been in school at the point that this guy spoke, but he was the closing speaker, and he basically said that probability sampling is dead, that they no longer worried about the quality of the sample because they were using their own client sample, their own lists, right, of people who were their customers or who had opted in to do the surveys with them. They didn't care. They were willing to ask those people and treat them as if they were representative of the general population, because in their minds they were. But to me, the minute I heard it, I went, oh my God, that basically means that most of the rules that I know as a researcher are out the door. And what I've noticed about the industry is that we've gone to faster and cheaper, right, as part of that equation. And we equate faster and cheaper as better. But the reality is that that's not true at all. Better has to stand on its own. So the quality of the data, even if you're faster and cheaper, you're not better until the quality of that data is better. There's just a lot of tools and techniques in our industry today that are pretty well accepted that are questionable in terms of their predictability to results. So you remember one of the rules is if you can't replicate it, then you have to question the validity of that data. So a lot of these new tools and techniques, and some of them aren't that new. They've been around for a long time. But some of the tools and techniques that we apply in our business today that are very popular today really are not, you can't replicate the data. And you really have a hard time explaining how one thing is connected to another. The quality of that work is really questionable. It's my soapbox issue, Joshua. It drives me nuts that really educated marketing researchers will do some of these things, and you're like, "Oh my God, what were you thinking?" How can you have any confidence in this at all? And yet, people do.
So, do you think it's mostly centered around cost? Is why people are going for this, or cost and time?
Cost and convenience, and in some cases, some tools and techniques look really amazing. They look great. Some of the tools can look really fantastic.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool.
Sure. It is, like I said, it's my soapbox issue. It drives me crazy.
So you mentioned when you were talking about that, though, that you are on the board of different MMR, MSMR programs. And I know you from being on the board of the UT Arlington MSMR program, where I am an alumni of. Go Mavs. So I wanted to just ask about how you got connected to UT Arlington MSMR. And then also, why did you choose to be a part of the board there?
I'm going to blame Jerry for that. Jerry was the one who convinced me to join the board.
Jerry Thomas?
Yeah, Jerry Thomas did. And the reason I did it was because I did no other marketing for my business at the time. So we had just started Links, research. And my partner, another guy named Chris, who's now retired, but Chris Miller was a graduate of the Georgia program, and he wanted to spend time with it. He wanted to spend some of our money on it. I was like, well, okay, fine.
Right.
So I'll just do the UTA. I'll do UTA because it was right there. Of course, that's when I lived in the mid cities. So it wasn't like you guys were far away. It was just around the corner from my house. But it turned out that I wanted to be involved in the industry when new members of the industry were being formed. So when you guys were coming out of school, I wanted to establish myself as somebody that you could trust to at least have an opinion on something and be able to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's really great.
And so that turned out to be, so I did it at several of the other programs as well, and still maintain a relationship with UTA and Southern Illinois because I enjoy those programs. I enjoy the people involved with both of those programs, and I've been able to have an impact on those programs and really enjoy my time there.
Having been somebody who's been mentored by you when I was in the program, I really do appreciate the insights that you had given me throughout that, and also just the honesty you present to all of us when we were putting the conference together or different things, just giving really solid career advice too. So I certainly thank you for that.
Anytime. Actually, it was and always is my pleasure. There's actually this great saying that Muhammad Ali, basically, he said, a rent for our lives, for being on the planet, is giving back to our community. So, and I totally agree with that. I think it's really important as more established people who have experience and can help others, that's really our duty, is to come back and help as much as we can. And I love it when I see somebody helping somebody else. It doesn't matter what the environment is, but when I see an older person helping a younger person in marketing research, that's really the best.
That's awesome. All right. So last question I have for you here. You are in a socially distant elevator, right? You're 6 feet apart from this person. You got to give an elevator speech. So 30 seconds to just explain to someone how to be a good mentor.
It is really about giving to the person that you're mentoring. Your responsibility as a mentor is to do what you can to help that person grow, develop, learn, and be successful, right? You're successful as a mentor when the person that you're mentoring is successful in what they're trying to achieve. Whether it's successful as being a better person or to achieving a career or whatever it is, mentoring is about the person you're mentoring. It really should be menteeing, because it's really the mentee who is the center of the universe in mentoring. You are simply, as a mentor, you're simply there to help them.
Well said. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. You've been listening to the On the Mark podcast. My name is Joshua McGinty. Have a great day.
Thanks, man.